Hello, I'm Dylan.
And I'm Keon.
This is Just Your Doctor, that podcast where all the casualties were on our side, because this week we watched War of the Sontarans.
Written by Chris Chibnall.
Directed by Jamie Magnus Stone.
And aired on November 7th, 2021.
Yeah, back again, doing it live-ish. So we watched this, on November the 8th, day after it aired again. Recording on November 11th, just a couple days later. Didn't get spoiled before watching the episode once again. Doing a pretty good job, me personally, not getting spoiled so far.
Yeah, same here. Once again, I attempted to spoiler myself online. Didn't work. Didn't really try too hard, but yeah.
Yeah, the difference between you and I is that you're actively trying to get spoiled. Meanwhile, I'm over here not trying to get spoiled. I actually pretty much don't go on Twitter between, whenever it airs in the UK and when we watch it on Monday evening. Because I know Twitter's going to be the damn place I'm going to get spoiled if I'm going to get spoiled.
Yeah, well, it's only a day. We're only watching them a day later. So... This is a good one to not be spoiled on, though. Things sort of, thankfully, I would say, slow down here in episode 2 of Flux. And, you're sort of taken on this journey with fewer threads to keep track of. It's really only 3.
Yeah, it really reduces the... It doesn't reduce the complexity, It does only focus on a couple of the plot threads introduced last week, but it does a good job of, at the end of the episode, there's still a lot of mystery, and I would say this episode, again, asks more questions than it answers, which I kind of feel like it should be, since we're not kind of halfway through the story on the downslope when we want to start wrapping things up. But it does condense the storylines, it does streamline everything a little bit, it kind of already shows you how these pieces might be fitting together.
Yeah, it brings a couple of the threads from episode 1 together, and then for a lot of them, it just doesn't address a lot of what was set up in episode 1, so, it definitely feels a lot more, contained, a lot more manageable to keep track of in your mind. Even though, like you said, it is actually, increasing the complexity here. Technically, it doesn't necessarily feel like it is, in a way.
Right. Well, it kind of does that by focusing in on one story, and I think it makes a good choice in focusing in on a story that we didn't get a lot of last week. We mentioned this, if you could figure it out, from our kind of haphazard explanation of the extremely convoluted episode. Convoluted in structure, not necessarily in content, that the Sontaran storyline only appeared twice in 2 very short scenes. In Halloween Apocalypse. And this week, we really focus in on that story, seemingly resolving it, but at the same time, it does leave us with one unanswered question that we may or may not get an answer to with that storyline, and that is the fact that, in case we forget to mention it later, Commander Ritzgar does mention that the Sontarans knew the Flux was coming.
Right. It's actually interesting because, one of the things that I did keep hearing online before watching the episode, while I was trying to spoil myself, was that people kept saying finally a proper Sontaran story. And when I watched,
do we all forget the Sontaran experiment?
Yeah, well, and it's It's not really, though. It kind of like the A plot is, but there's a lot more going on.
Yeah, it's a Sontaran story in the same way that Dark Water, Death in Heaven is a Cyberman story.
Right, and it's in a way, the Sontaran storyline being the A plot almost makes the rest of the season and the actual big dilemma going on here with the Flux and all of that. It makes it seem more almost enticing or appealing or mysterious in a way, because it's like, we're dealing with the Sontarans here, we're dealing with this immediate threat, and we're dealing with a very comprehensible threat, I think, in the story so far. And it just, it's sort of, it's simmering in the background of like, what the heck is going on with the Flux? What the heck is going on with Azure and Swarm? You don't get too many answers regarding all of that. You get a little bit. But it's like, for me personally, at least, I would imagine other people are the same. It's like, while you're watching the Sontaran stuff, you're like, mentally, you're like, okay, this is just a drop in the bucket of what's actually happening here. What is actually happening here, right?
It's that, how do I want to say this? There's even, in a way, the kind of question of what's happening in the choice of using the Sontarans themselves. This is something that I think would be like so obviously a Dalek kind of thing. Like, the Daleks love extermination, they love destroying things, and we've already set up that the Daleks have like time controllers who can see all of time, right? That's like an actual established part of the Dalek race. So there's even this additional question where it's like, oh, the Daleks are not even involved. It's the damn Sontarans and their psychic surveyor, which I believe is a new addition to their lore. And that alone even raises a lot of questions, like, why the Sontarans of all races?
Yeah, and it seems like they were just using the Flux to go to war, a war they knew they could win.
Yeah, this does really show that Chibnall has, at the very least, a good grasp of what the Sontarans were set up as in the Time Warrior, in the Sontaran experiment, in the Invasion of Time, when they invade Gallifrey, that they're like a very war-oriented culture, and a lot of their culture, to use the same word again, is built around winning wars and fighting wars because they're a clone race. And when they, in the classic series, when they introduced that long-running war with the Rootans, so it really fits their character that they're using this like massive universe-ending event to pick a war that they know they can win.
Yeah, that is actually interesting though. Like, you mentioned it while we were watching the episode, is like they kind of just like picked an era to invade where they have an overwhelming advantage.
They lampshade this in the episode when the Doctor's like, why'd you pick the Crimean War of all wars? And Riskar says something like, we knew we could win here. And then he also says, also, I really wanted to ride a horse.
Back at it again with the white horse.
Damn, Riskar back at it again with that white horse.
I honestly hate that meme has stuck with me for like 5 years at this point.
Yeah, why that meme of all memes? There are so many memes.
I'm gonna be
the episode actually
that meme on my deathbed. Just watch.
Please
no.
Lower
me into the ground. I'll come back for a split second. Just okay, whatever.
So the episode actually opens with a very, very interesting scene that again raises a lot of questions that isn't answered anywhere in the episode. It's this very short scene where we see like an almost like horror movie-esque house floating above a black and white landscape, and the house is like, completely nonsensical, obviously not a real house model. And then like the Doctor snaps to reality. This is like happening in the Doctor's mind. Just a really interesting scene.
Yeah, I completely forgot about this. Yeah, it's all it's black and white, and the house looks like this just sort of like Lovecraftian eldritch entity combined with a house. It looks something like what you would see in a Neil Gaiman story or something like that, like the house from Coraline. And then the Doctor snaps awake, and she is in sort of what the TARDIS wiki here describes as a field of marsh surrounded by dead soldiers and spent artillery.
Yeah, she immediately recognizes that somehow they survived. Man, I was really hoping for a mention of the HADS in here, the hostile action displacement system that was introduced like twice in the classic show, which is like if the TARDIS is really in danger, it displaces itself like a couple kilometers away from where it is or whatever.
Yeah.
So she scans some uniforms and they immediately get accosted by what is revealed to be Mary Seacole because she thinks that the Doctor and gang are going through people's pockets to steal things. And the Doctor says, "Oh no, I'm a doctor. I'm here to try to figure out like what year we're in."
Yeah, and it turns out to be, oh God, when is it? It's like
1855.
1855. So this is the Crimean War. We get a little bit of background here. Background that I assume made most people go like, okay, so this is where we are in space and time. Got you, we're grounding ourselves here. I didn't know any of this history though, so, it was just a big whatever for me, I guess. I'm not learned enough to to appreciate the Crimean War.
We meaning Keon and I, certainly learned a lot of European history in our, high school, middle school education.
Yes, well, speak for yourself. I mean,
but what I'm gonna say is that the Crimean War was never really a big part of the curriculum. Even though European history was, they never really talked a lot about the Crimean War. And I was actually curious watching this, like, and I guess like flashing back to like the Rosa episode, like how much I guess this is a question for the audience, like how much of this did the people at home who watched in the UK like actually know about? Like how many of them at home were like, yes, the Crimean War, I know everything about the Crimean War, like I know enough to know exactly like what's going on here. I mean, it's like not important to the episode, but I was curious because, like you said, we didn't know anything about it.
Yeah, you seem to know a little more than I did, but maybe you were just bluffing. I don't know.
Barely. I mean, it's like barely any more than
I didn't know who Mary Seacole was, for example. Like she was a new addition to like history for me.
I mean, I only know who she is by name. I wouldn't have been able to really like tell you anything more about her than that she existed.
Yeah, I mean, who I assume she's exactly pretty much who she was depicted to be in the episode, but I mean, let's see what Wikipedia says here. Mary Jane Seacole
yes.
was a British Jamaican nurse and businesswoman who set up the British Hotel behind the lines during the Crimean War. Okay, so basically exactly how she was in the episode.
Yeah, exactly what she was. Great. What I heard post watching the episode was a lot of people appreciating actually her inclusion in this episode because a lot of people remember Florence Nightingale as like being a nurse, right? And I guess she was a nurse in the Crimean War. She was mentioned in the episode, and I think after the episode aired, a lot of people appreciated the Doctor Who was like bringing recognition again back to how Mary Seacole was actually doing it, just as much, if not more, and maybe even probably before actually, Florence Nightingale did, and how we, as a society, forget that, maybe because Mary Seacole wasn't white. Mm-hmm. That's neither here nor there. The gang, the fam, is, they want to know what's going on because they're like, how many Russians are you fighting? And Mary Seacole's like, Russians? Girl, we fight in Sontarans. And the Doctor's like, you're fighting what?
Mm-hmm. And this is after, so they actually split up, unintentionally, as it were. So they're following Mary Seacole, and Dan starts like disappearing.
Yeah, I was like, okay, here we go. We're going to reveal that Dan is important somehow. He's regenerating into Carvanista or something. Biggest plot twist.
Right, because it looks like he's sort of glowing and, turning transparent. the same thing starts happening to Yaz. So they basically just they get sent to other periods of time and other places. The Doctor tries to go after them actually, but the TARDIS's door disappears as well. She can't get into the TARDIS.
Yeah, this has never happened before, that the TARDIS just was straight like, doors are not a thing anymore.
Mm-hmm. And this is a very, you know, I actually neglected while watching the episode to note all the like classic Who references. I'm sure there were many. There were a bunch we even caught that I'm unfortunately not going to be able to name here because again I neglected to write them down. But like, this is, I mean, it's somewhat adjacent to what we'd get in the classic show, with like you know, the TARDIS being taken out of commission for some, you know, for some reason or another.
Yeah, you know, just in the classic show, it was always them having to be separated fully from the TARDIS because they never wanted to come up with an explanation for why they couldn't get into the TARDIS and just leave. So I like to Marco Polo where they just got kidnapped with the TARDIS.
Yeah, and it was always, you know, it made sense in the moment, I guess. And maybe it's just one of those things where it's like, all right, just stop nitpicking the story already. But it's like, you know, they could have just, I feel like in most cases, they could have just been like, well, they didn't want to leave. Like, they wanted to actually solve the issue, you know? Versus, like, you know, having to erect some sort of, I don't know, force field around the TARDIS or have it fall off a cliff like it did in that one episode. I think the Time Meddler, it, like, just fell off a cliff or was, like, swept away by the tide or something.
Yeah. Then it just shows up at the end of the episode and it's like, huh, that's convenient. I think actually they reused the falling off the cliff in, was it Monster of Peladon? Where they get out of the TARDIS and there's like a storm going on and then they get struck by lightning and it just falls off the cliff.
Yeah, it beats me. Yeah, I feel like in a lot of those cases they could have just been like, well, the Doctor and companions like actually want to stay. You know, they actually want to solve the problem here. They don't just want to leave.
The biggest development in Doctor Who history was the writers realizing that like they don't need to incapacitate the TARDIS. Like maybe the Doctor just wants to stay. And arguably they kind of figured that out in the Daleks, but they had to do it in a way that the first Doctor intentionally incapacitated the TARDIS because he wanted to stay.
Yeah.
So anyway, it just turns out that Dan and Yaz are just taking a little hop through time. The Doctor gives some suitably techno-babble explanation about how, like, jumping through the Luparian field in the TARDIS and how the TARDIS not being fully shielded and then being human has, like, caused them to be susceptible to time particles or something.
Meanwhile, Vinder, everyone's favorite character from the Halloween apocalypse, shows up on a pretty cool-looking spaceship.
I can't tell if you're being facetious or not,
yeah,
but like, I like him. Yeah, I don't think...
Yeah. Probably is my favorite character from the Halloween apocalypse.
Including the main trio?
Yeah, I guess. Well, it's like my favorite story-specific character, I guess you could say. Although Dan is probably also going to be a story-specific companion.
Yeah, maybe. We'll see, I guess. Not really sure where Dan's story's going after this episode. I wasn't sure last week, but I had theories. This week I have no theories.
Like, we talked about this while we were watching the episode, but it's like, I highly doubt that any of this, you know, story or any of these characters are really going to carry over beyond Chris Chibnall. So it's like, we have Flux, and then we have whatever comes after, the 3 episodes that come after. However connected to Flux they are or aren't, you know?
Yeah, it's and that's crazy to me because I think Chibnall's introducing... The Flux is obviously... The Flux probably will not be mentioned again. Chibnall's probably going to set it up as like a one-time event, but like in between that, I think maybe some people are missing this. He's introducing a lot of really cool really subtle aspects to the lore, like the Luparian race and not even just that, but like the genetic link between them and the humans, and the idea that can be used again between different species. The fact that Carvanista was part of the division, and that implies that either A, that non-Time Lords can be part of the division, or B, that Time Lords can regenerate into non-human looking species. This whole planet of time, the like Temple of Atropos, like all of this, there's a lot of really interesting subtle things that Chibnall's adding to the lore here that I think are really interesting. The most interesting to me is the possibility that Carvanista is a Time Lord who regenerated into a form that looks like a Luparian and may not necessarily be Luparian, in the same way that the Doctor regenerates into a form that always looks human.
Yeah.
Obviously, that's neither confirmed nor denied in the episodes, but like the idea, the possibility that it could be true is really interesting to me.
And the planet called Time, don't forget that like master class level line. There's no planet called Time.
We're not there yet. But
no, you're right. There's a lot of really interesting stuff being introduced. And again, this episode further drives home the point that all this stuff feels so much more important, so much more impactful when it isn't preceded by similar, like, high-level universe-ending threats. It's like, this is really the first time we've had something on this scale in the past, 4 years of Doctor Who, making it feel a lot more dangerous.
Yeah, And interestingly, I think actually building on that, we've had threats that could escalate to be world-ending, like the Solitract. In that episode, they're like, if the Solitract escapes, it will wipe out our reality. But like, there was never the immediate threat of that wasn't there. So we always saw the Doctor stopping these world-ending threats when they were still small threats. And this is like, the Doctor didn't even know it was coming, and it's already here.
Yeah, I'm still holding out for that theory that like the Doctor is in a different universe, and that's why she didn't know about the Flux or the planet called Time or any of this stuff.
I guess we'll see. So yeah, Vinder's on this mysterious-looking spaceship station that looks kind of like an ancient temple of some sort.
It looks like that one room from my favorite Doctor Who story, of the classic show at least, the Armageddon Factor.
I all knew that was coming.
The where they go into that like computer room. If you remember that.
Barely. God, it's so long ago since we wrote that story. Oh, yes, okay.
Since we wrote that story?
Since we watched that story, excuse me. I'm looking at an image of the story on the TARDIS Wiki now. And yeah, okay. Yeah, I see what you're saying.
Yeah. We get this floating, it's sort of a triangular prism, a pyramid, an upside-down floating pyramid shape. It calls itself, what is it? It's the something triangle. The
priest triangle.
The priest triangle, right. Yeah, sort of a misnomer there. They're not really triangles. They're not really two-dimensional.
They're made of 4 triangles, though. Close enough.
Yeah, well, maybe it's like 4 triangles and a square. I don't know.
No, it's definitely a triangular prism. Busting out my geometry. Oh man,
yeah, I know.
The guy who played the priest triangle was in the Leisure Hive as Hardin.
Wow. That's so weird.
Sorry, I was just looking on the TARDIS wiki.
That's so weird. He does have a kind of a classic Who vibe to his voice. We both commented that he kind of sounds like John Leeson as K9.
Yeah. They also have very K9-esque dialogue because they're like, "Can you fix? Can you fix?"
Mm-hmm.
And Vinder's like, "Maybe."
Yeah, he doesn't know what he needs to be fixing. I think at this point in the episode, we do see him go into that like the temple like proper, the main area of the temple.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just sort of, it looks like there's just this like dais in the middle of the room. Haven't used that word in like 5 years. And there's sort of these destroyed statues, and this is what they need him to fix.
Yeah, I want to say there was 6 statues, 6 or 8. and 2 of them are busted, and they only appear when Vinder gets close.
Mm-hmm. It's like a proximity lock or something. I forget what they call it.
At this point, I think somebody refers to them as the Mori. Was it the triangle? Maybe it was Vinder, one of the 2. Like, I thought the Mori were just a myth. Turns out they're real. I have some more things I want to say on the Mori, but I'm going to save until the end of the episode.
Oh, really? I don't. I mean, I'm curious what you have to say, because, like, what could you possibly have to say about them?
Guess you'll find out at the end of the episode. Guess you'll find out at the end of the episode. I just have a theory about... I just want to make some connections between them and something I was thinking of, but we'll get to the end of the episode first before I do that.
Pretty soon after this scene, it's not right after, but I think it's worth just it's pretty close, so I think it's worth just explaining now. Yaz shows up on the same ship that Vinder's on.
Right.
And she meets that guy from the 1820s.
That's still the plot thread with the least explanation so far. Like, what is he doing here? What is this? What's going on?
Well, it's like every time he shows up, he keeps speaking in riddles and then just disappearing, which he does here as well. He just says some incomprehensible stuff and walks off. And then Yaz is brought to the same room where Vinder is.
Well, Yaz is like, explain to me, like, what happened. He goes, you think explaining would make you understand? No, you can never explain. And she's like, well, just start at the beginning. And he's like, the beginning? Where is the beginning? And it's like, okay, dude, just, okay.
Mm-hmm. Meanwhile, the Doctor's brought to the British hotel.
Right.
And she meets, I forget his name, but the general person.
Riskar?
Yeah.
Oh, no, sorry, the British general.
No, yeah, the British general.
Logan.
His name was.
General Logan.
Oh, yeah. Played by Gerald Kidd.
He's drinking rum while doing military strategy. I feel really great for his unit, you know. Their commander is coming up with these plans while drunk. But anyway.
This is the point in the episode where we learn how much history has diverged, because they pull out like a little map, and the Doctor is scanning it, and her gaze falls on Russia, but instead of Russia it says Sontar.
This is the most dystopian map we've ever seen in Doctor Who, and we've seen some pretty dystopian ones.
Yeah. It's pretty interesting to me. I'm not obviously a big expert on Russian history. It's pretty interesting to me that, like, even back in the 1800s and probably way earlier too, like, Russia was considered just like all of it, right? Like, you know, Eastern Europe, like part of Russia, all the way to Siberia, and, like, you know, all the way to Alaska, basically, is like, you know, I'm sure there were just people living out in Siberia and stuff who had like absolutely no connection to Moscow or any of that stuff. I'm talking like the 1800s. And yet they were just like, yeah, this is all just Russia. This is all just ours. You know, there's probably people out there who like had no idea they were being included in this. Right? That has to be the case, right?
Hey, I'm no expert on Russian history, so...
Me neither. That's why I'm just wildly speculating.
All I know is that, like, Russia has been the whole thing for, like, quite a long time, actually.
Yeah.
It's, you know, when people talk about the politics of the like European kings, you know, and the English king and the French king and queens and the Spanish king and queen and like German king and queen, how they're all marrying their cousins and everything. Like, people forget that the Russian king and queen were like involved in that, you know, and people forget like the Romanov family, you know.
Yeah,
Russia's had a king for a long time, so
the Russian royal family was like really heavily and highly related to the British royal family at some point, if I remember correctly.
And like lest we forget also that like the Russian word Tsar is an etymological descendant of Caesar,
Yeah.
the same way that Kaiser is in
Yeah. Yeah,
Germany.
that's the case for a lot of those terms. Yeah, Caesar, the guy, like, that's how you know he was like OP in history, right? Is like his name like is literally now just a word that means like ruler or king. I'm just looking at this like time lapse map here of like Russian expansion, and like, yeah, it does look like it was just, it came to be the whole thing. And actually more expansive, obviously, given the Soviet Union than it is currently.
Well, it's not currently the Soviet Union, but
No, no. What I mean is like the Soviet Union is more expansive than what it currently is, than what Russia
oh,
currently is.
got it. For some reason, I interpreted your statement as saying like as saying it used to be more expansive than the Soviet Union currently is, and I went, wait, maybe my brain just skipped a couple words that you said there, or maybe Skype just potatoed. Both are possible, I guess.
Meh.
So Yaz, like we said, has ended up in the same place that Vinder is, but we should mention that Dan has actually ended up back in Liverpool 2021.
Right.
And in another dystopian twist, the Sontarans are ruling Liverpool and have a curfew in place, and then we get like the most hilarious stormtrooper-esque scene where they can't hit the broadside of a barn because Dan is just like dead center of the street with no cover, and the Sontarans, like 5 of them, all miss shooting him, which obviously he has god-tier plot armor, but I just thought it was funny. I think I mentioned it when it happened, and I just went, well, I'm not even going to really care about this as that much because it's like not even a factor in the episode.
Yeah, what is a factor in the episode, though, and is honestly really weird, is like Dan runs into his parents.
Of all people,
They
yeah.
only look like 5 years older than him.
I think
10
the actor
max.
and actress are like only 7 years older than John Bishop.
Yeah, it was so weird. Like he's pretty old himself. The character, I mean, it's like the character is visually old.
John Bishop was born after Doctor Who started. Born in 66.
Yeah, he's like almost 60 now, I guess. It's like 50.
A lot of actors were born after Doctor Who started, but it's like so wild to me that people who were born after this show began are now acting in this show. Like just the like scale of time that's passed, which isn't even that much, but it just feels, that makes it feel like a lot.
I mean, that was always the case for New Who though, because like, I mean, just think of Rose. Like Billie Piper wasn't 40 when that came out. She was born after the show started airing.
No, yeah, I mean, like I said, it's not unusual. It's not unusual at all. I'm just saying, like, thinking about it makes it feel like, how long it's been.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. I get that. I think Dan's parents kind of explain the situation. They're like, the Sontarans showed up like shortly after Dan left. He's been gone for a couple days.
Yeah, I actually, before we go too far, I actually want to just say something on the Sontarans not being able to hit Dan. A lot of people have thrown a lot of ridicule at this scene, and I was just thinking right now, like maybe that actually kind of adds to the Sontarans' character in a way that we obviously get in this episode, that they're dumb as a bag of bricks, But maybe it just kind of really underscores the point that the Sontarans really usually only win because of their overwhelming numbers. Every prior Sontaran story where they don't have a numerical advantage, they lose pretty badly, pretty quickly. So maybe it's because they can't hit anything.
Maybe. Speaking of prior Sontaran stories, at some point in this episode, I forget where, we get a name drop of Lynx.
Yeah, it's later in the episode when they're talking with Riskar.
I believe Lynx was the first Sontaran that we saw on the show.
Yeah, he was. All the way back in the Time Warrior, the Sarah Jane Smith's first story.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah, yeah.
Back with a third Doctor.
Wow, was that her? Wow.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
Was the first story
Man, the
of
Sontarans
season
premiered
whatever
with
that
the
was.
third Doctor.
Yeah.
Damn.
Yeah. Yeah, so anyway, they after the general, says some dismissive things to the Doctor because she's a woman and a doctor in this he obviously doesn't believe that she's a doctor, but that's besides the point. Mary C calls like, hey, the general doesn't like this, but I've got a Sontaran back here. And the Doctor's like, you got a what? So they go talk to the Sontaran. The Sontaran brings back like Russell T's apparently like most significant contribution to the show, which was the Shadow Proclamation.
Yeah, so we get a reference to that. But he's obviously sort of he's not very comfortable with his situation. He's obviously been shamed by like not having died in battle, but instead being taken prisoner.
Right.
Prisoner in quotes because he's not actually a prisoner. He's a guest of the hotel technically. Because Mary Sequel keeps and this is it's an interesting point in the episode. Like Mary Sequel keeps reminding mostly the General Logan that like her establishment is not like an army establishment. It's just hers. He's not like in any way a proprietor of this hotel or anything.
And she does remind the Doctor as well that she doesn't treat only the British. She searches the battlefield for any casualties or injuries and treats them.
Mm-hmm.
Which in this case includes this Sontaran, whose name is Svild.
Yeah, I think it's Svild. Svalbard? Okay, no. I don't
The
know.
Doctor bluffs with him by saying that she can give him information on the Sontaran's greatest enemy, the Doctor, and he goes, the Doctor is here! And she goes, closer than you think.
Yeah, she tells him the Doctor is in the Crimea. I always wondered why it was called, like, the Crimea, It's like, why is it called that? Why is it not just Crimea?
Well, according to Wikipedia, they do refer to it in the first sentence as just Crimea is a peninsula, and the title of the article is just Crimea.
Huh? I always heard it referred to as the Crimea, and the dialogue in this episode refers to it that way as well. The reason I've heard it referred to at all is because Russia like reinvaded it like
in 2014 or 2015.
in 2014. Yeah.
And it's like currently a disputed area.
Yeah.
It has been for nearly 7 years now.
Yeah, it was like, I think it's technically supposed to be part of Ukraine. And then like people just forget about this now. Or people have just forgotten about it. But yeah, Russia just like straight up invaded it. And we're just like, yeah, this is ours again.
I guess people forgot because it wasn't exactly like Ukraine had the military, ability to go up against like the goddamn Russian Federation.
Yeah. That actually just reminded me that like, I think I looked this up for the show probably a couple years ago, but it's like nobody really knows the etymology of Russia. This is only just like
the word Russia?
Yeah, this is like barely related, but like, yeah, nobody knows exactly where it came from.
Ah, a mystery to solve.
It's like for other countries, like the etymology of where the name came from is pretty clear. For Russia, it's like nobody really knows.
That's actually really interesting. I didn't know that.
Yeah, another useless fact for your brain.
I've learned a lot of useless facts on this podcast, to be honest. I would not know a tenth of the information that I do if we weren't doing this podcast.
Yeah, it is actually crazy how much random stuff we've looked up for this endeavor. Yeah, actually, the Crimea was invaded shortly after we began Trust Your Doctor. Is there some correlation here? Okay, no.
It's weird to think that Trust Your Doctor is older than the Crimean Peninsula being part of Russia.
Or it was before, like, I think. I don't know, whatever.
No, it was part of Ukraine. I mean, okay,
Yeah.
I'm sure it was part of Russia before it became a part of Ukraine.
Yeah. It's like, remember, Russia was more expansive, as I just found out.
I mean, it's also like,
I'll put in the show notes.
It's also a little tricky when you have the USSR, because do you consider things that were part of the vassal states of the USSR as part of Russia? You know?
Yeah, why not? I mean, they had control over a lot of places.
Yeah, but it's like a, do you consider LA Californian or American? You know, and most people would say American. Yeah, sure, but like, I guess that's just my point. Like, there is a region of more specificity you can go for there.
Yeah, but they did all kinds of stuff like those sort of ethnic redistribution campaigns, which sounds like really dystopian, and I guess is.
Everything the USSR did was dystopian. I mean,
Yeah.
throw back to Stalin, just like, as soon as someone like turned on him, he just had them killed and edited out of every photo they were ever in.
Yeah.
Pretended they didn't exist. Anyway, I don't know how we got on this like tangent about the USSR.
No. So, where the hell were we in the episode?
Well, so after the Doctor gives Svild this information, we cut back to Yaz in the temple, and she meets up with Vinda because the priest triangles are like, can you repair? And she looks at her hand, and there's like, obviously, what would the Doctor do written on her hand? So she's like, yeah, I can repair. And the Vinda asks the priest triangles to set parameters for repair, and they explain that the Mori, two of whom are broken, control the flow of time, and that this is the planet of time, and that all time flows through the Mori.
Oh, I didn't realize that this was the planet of time.
Oh yeah, This is.
I thought they were on a spaceship.
Time. I kind of thought that too, but the triangles do say that this is the Temple of Atropos on the planet of time.
Huh. That was sort of the most interesting thing that they set up in this episode. That I latched onto for whatever reason. Maybe it was just because I found the line, "There's no planet called time," to be kind of a little absurd.
There is no planet called time.
It's like, yeah, it's such an odd decision. Like, what if they just came up with a planet called like space or something like that, or like planet. I guess we actually do that as a world, right? It's like we just call the moon moon.
We also call Earth Earth.
I know. Other planets' moons have names, except like the Earth's moon is just moon.
In a lot of sci-fi stories where Earth has become part of like a grander universe of aliens, they give Earth's moon the name Luna, which is
Luna.
just Latin for
moon.
For moon, but
yeah, or calling the sun Sol, which just means sun.
like, okay, I mean, I guess Latin is a language unique to humans, but so is English, so
yeah, it's like when people call this is never called into question because it's widely accepted, but it is kind of absurd that, like, you know, the humanities, you know, just like the broad field of the humanities is called the humanities, like kind of implying that the other academic fields are not also unique to humans. Like, you know, I don't see like, you know, animals out here doing math. Like, it seems pretty human to me. You know, like, we're the only ones who do science. Like, it's pretty human to do that.
yeah, you know what? Science
is the true humanity. We're laughing about it because of how against the grain that idea is, but it's true, you know, like, it actually is true. It's like you don't see platypuses out here doing like chemistry. You
I
don't
think the
see
plural of
butterfly.
platypus is platypi.
Okay, whatever.
To delve into the humanities, if you will.
I know, yeah. Anyway, we're way off topic.
The doctor meets with Ritzgar, and is like, "Oh, guess what? I'm the doctor." And Ritzgar immediately is like, "What?"
Wait, isn't this way later?
Yeah, I think it's
Because Svild goes back to his people first.
okay. So
Doesn't
Svild gets killed. Okay, we skipped over Svild telling Ritzgar that he's got to go meet the doctor.
he? Yeah.
Oh no!
Well, he I don't know if we've ever had this bit of lore as part of the Sontaran lore before, but like Svild dies like an honorable death by being killed to atone for his mistakes and for being captured.
Yeah,
We also see the Sontaran like base thing, which is hidden inside like a holographic rock.
yeah. They just kind of they just follow Svild back to the base. Svild has no peripheral vision or hearing at all because they're following a solid like 10 feet behind him.
Yeah, the we neglected to mention that Dan infiltrated the Sontaran stronghold in Liverpool, and they too have no peripheral vision because he's just like skulking around like right off to the side. Bringing it back, the classic Who lack of peripheral vision.
I know we made this reference while we were watching it. We're like, bringing back the real hero of classic Who, guards who have no peripheral vision. Lest we forget the Dalek in, what was it, like the chase, who like looks straight on at one of the rebels and fails to process what it's looking at.
Maybe the Sontaran like facial structure actually does give them like less peripheral vision than humans. We don't know, because it's like the unique positioning of eyes on the human face is what gives us like a wide range of vision and the ability to comprehend like 3D, like, so maybe the Sontarans are different. Who knows? Maybe that's why they can't hit Dan. Maybe they have like no depth perception.
Oh my god. Oh my god, we're figuring it out. We've cracked the code. That actually is like a really interesting idea that is actually supported maybe in the episode by the fact that like they have no peripheral vision and don't see Dan when he's skulking around, and Svild doesn't see them when they're following, and like Mary Seacole just observes the entire Sontaran battalion from like an extremely exposed cliff face without ever getting seen.
Right, and when Dan's running away, he's running down this alley with like pretty much no reference point as to where he is. So if you don't have the ability to like see 3D space, as a lot of Earth animals themselves don't, you might have a hard time hitting him.
I'm actually kind of sold on this. I actually kind of believe this theory, I kind of believe this.
Yeah, I kind of do as well. Weirdly enough, the one kind of wrench in that is that like the difference, typically, as far as I know, the difference between being able to see the difference between having depth perception or not depends on whether your eyes are flat on the front of your face like they are in humans or like chimpanzees or monkeys, for example, versus like something like a deer has no depth perception because its eyes are like facing two different directions.
Well, we don't know if a Sontaran eyeball works in the same way as an eyeball here. We already know their atmosphere is totally different, so maybe to compensate for that, something else developed differently.
Right, exactly. Lest we forget, because you can't really forget looking at them, but lest we neglect to mention that they are just like sentient potatoes.
The BBC official like social media account even posted a picture that was like spot the difference, and it was a picture of Riskar and then a picture where Riskar's head had been edited to be a potato. Great. I'll link that in the show notes, I guess.
A bit of clean, innocuous humor from the official Doctor Who Twitter.
So this is actually where we get the Lynx reference, is when the Doctor's talking with Riskar. because Riscott says something like, we're asserting the claim that Link's made when he came here, like, in the past. And the Doctor's like, did he though?
That's actually a good point. I didn't realize this until now, but that actually is a classic Who connection, that they are invading a piece of distant history, because the Time Warrior and I think one or two other Sontaran stories from classic Who were them invading like the medieval era.
Yeah, they just look for easy battles. It's interesting, actually, that like the irony in the Sontarans is that their whole race is a clone race bred for war, but they always pick battles that is like impossible to lose for them.
Except that time they invaded Gallifrey.
Yeah, that was a okay, but they succeeded until the Doctor messed it all up for them.
Yeah, that's true, actually.
If I remember correctly, they actually succeeded in that episode. Amazingly.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember that as well. I think we're right about that. I don't think we're misremembering that they succeeded.
No, I'm just skimming the TARDIS page. They definitely succeeded at some point, yeah.
Yeah, that was the episode where Leela got written out. Story, rather.
Oh, yeah!
It was the invasion of time.
Yeah, there's also the one where the Doctor like becomes president for the first time.
I think that might also be the one that introduces the Matrix.
I think so.
They don't go
yeah.
into the Matrix until the Deadly Assassin, but yeah,
the Doctor just kind of uses it in the Invasion of Time to like develop military strategy or something, and they like explain nothing about it.
It still blows my mind to this day that like the entire, not only the concept, but literally like the name of the Matrix was created by Doctor Who and just airlifted by the Wachowskis out into their own franchise.
Okay, before somebody takes this podcast and quotes it on Wikipedia as a fact, we don't know for certain that they lifted the idea from Doctor Who. We just know that the filmmakers admitted to having watched Doctor Who, and it was on Doctor Who many years before the Matrix movies were made.
I mean, yeah, the Wachowskis have gone on record as saying they like Doctor Who, and the Matrix in Doctor Who is literally called the Matrix, and it's literally a computer world. Like, you don't have to. It's just not a stretch putting two and two together there. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, but we shouldn't state it as a fact because we don't know it for sure.
Oh my god! Yeah, true enough. It would just.
Lest we delve into the discussion we had on Zenith about what is fact, what is truth.
Oh my god. All I'm saying.
But I think in this situation we can say we don't know this is a fact.
Sure, yeah, that's true. It would just be a great shock to me if it was somehow confirmed that like they just created the Matrix independently of Doctor Who. That would surprise me a lot. But whatever.
We never know. So I think at this point, based on my notes, after Dan has infiltrated 2021, we see Swarm again. Swarm and Azure.
Swarm and Azure show up in the corridors of the Temple of Atropos.
Yeah. And they have been joined by a third mysterious person who they refer to as Passenger.
They refer to him as Passenger. He also has another name too, doesn't he?
I thought for a second that they called him Atropos. Like, I really thought they did. I did too. But then they refer to him as Passenger again later in the episode, so then I second-guessed myself.
Yeah, so we either both misinterpreted that, or he is also called Atropos, which is the name, like we mentioned before, of the temple, or like maybe the name of like a city or country or something.
Mm-hmm.
We don't know well, it is the name of the temple, that's for sure. It's the Temple of Atropos.
Yeah, but we don't know whether the name refers to where it is or who it's named for. And and Azure immediately kills one of the priest triangles. And I'll be honest, I'm man enough to admit this. I was a little sad. I was a little sad to see the priest triangle just get disintegrated.
Yeah, I was as well. It was I was surprised how, like, it's not like it was, breaking down crying, but it's like I was surprised kind of how hard that moment hits.
Because they had made the priest triangles to be out. They had made them out, excuse me, to be so innocent before that point. And that's part of the reason why it hits so hard.
Yeah, and it's probably also like how I immediately connected them with K9, given their voice. It's like almost as if they were just destroying K9.
Right.
And let it be said once again. Actually, I don't think we said this in our episode on the Halloween apocalypse, but whatever. I'll just say it here. I was thinking it back then too. Swarm and Azure are very unsettling, and they're very like interesting, and I think like good villains. They're just scary as hell. Like they're just scary.
They're terrifying because they're so in control of the entire situation when they're on screen. I mean, think about the Master. Like, the Master is at his or her most terrifying when they're like, when the Doctor realizes their plan a whole episode in, and the Master's like basically already won. You know, there's some hilarious episodes where the Master's like still setting his plan up when the Doctor shows up, and he's like, ignore the paint on the wall that I'm still putting on, right? And in those episodes, it's like a joke. The Master's like barely even scary. You know, and that's, I think, why Swarm and Azure is so scary, because from the instant they show up, you can tell that they're in control and everything is going their way already. Like, in 2 episodes, there has not been a moment so far where they have had any setback at all. And they now meet Yaz and Vinder, and you think for a moment, like, maybe something will happen, and, like, they're, like, literally no match at all to do anything to the two of them. And Vinder has full-on, like, a disintegration rifle in his hand.
Yep. Plus, it's their design as well is sort of very unsettling.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. They're out here looking like geodes.
I know. Eldrad's like estranged cousins.
I'd be so shocked if they don't at least like make a reference to Eldrad in the story somehow. Like I don't think these people are related to Eldrad, but like it, I don't know.
You think they're going to reference the Hand of Fear?
Well, just, you know, if the Doctor said some witty line like, "Hey, you look like somebody I used to know, like Eldrad or something," you know, like, I don't know. It looks so much like Eldrad. It's like.
Maybe. I mean, given the amount of Classic Who references we're getting and just the Classic Who vibe of all of this, I wouldn't be totally surprised.
It'd be completely mind-blowing if these two were, like, members of Eldrad's race or something.
Yeah, I don't remember Eldrad being as omnipotent, though.
I don't know. Maybe I need to rewatch Hand of Fear. Eldrad designed the regenerator chamber, a device that used irradiation to revitalize.
Well, that's a typo.
Oh, sorry, to revitalize. I read it wrong. That was no typo, it was just me. Eldrad had a ring which contained... Oh, yeah, that's right. Eldrad didn't even exist at the start of the episode. They, like, reconstituted him from nothing. I don't know. That feels pretty omnipotent to me.
I thought that until now, actually, that was actually Sarah Jane's last story, if I remember correctly.
Yes, and she complains that the Doctor dropped her off in the wrong place. Throwback.
Yeah, plus it's just like Swarm and Azure are so mysterious that it's just like who they even are is such a draw, you know, of Doctor Who Flux season as a whole. Anyway, I guess they show up like we mentioned before, and we kind of already explained a bit of this. They show up, they appear before Vinder and Yaz, and they mock them. They overpower them. They mock Yaz for having the "what would the Doctor do" thing on her hand. They tell her to embrace what would Jesus do. No, they don't do that.
Well, not only do they mock her for it, they totally turn it around on her and use it to intimidate her because nobody knows she's got it in her hand, and they're like, we know what you've got on your hand. We know that you're just underneath a scared little girl who's trying to be like her hero.
Yeah, so not only are they basically omnipotent, they're basically also omniscient.
It's interesting. It's very interesting because I thought at first the scene kind of implied that we were getting another like meeting them out of order moment, because it kind of felt like they were implying like that they have already met Yaz and Vinder, but once
yeah.
they
No, you're right about that, because don't they have that line as like you humans, you see time as so linear.
Yeah, that's right.
So you're right. Well, you're at least onto something with that.
Very interesting. Maybe they're like the aliens in Arrival who don't see time in a linear fashion.
Yeah. That movie actually came out 5 years ago today, I think.
Yeah, actually, it was. Yeah.
November 11th, 2016. I just
Nice
watched it for
memory,
the first time
Mike?
earlier this year. No, I saw it online. It was like today's 5th anniversary.
Oh, you've seen it now. Nice.
Yeah, I watched it. It was pretty good. That movie actually, we talked about this on Inevitable, our classic sci-fi podcast, on which we're currently watching Firefly. We talk about the Kuleshov effect. That movie actually has one of the greatest like usages of it.
Yeah,
which is
it does. Yeah,
just to summarize the effect is it's when a movie or show, I guess, puts two scenes together in a way that makes you think that they're more related than they actually are, to kind of mislead you.
Yeah.
And just to spoil that in Arrival, they sort of there's scenes that for the entire movie seem like flashbacks, but they're actually visions of the future.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the ending of that movie just like completely reframes everything you've seen to that point. That's like one of my favorite parts of that movie.
Yeah, it's a mind blow for sure. the aliens in that are actually similar to Azure and Swarm, both in that they don't see time in a linear manner, and also that they're just frightening to look at.
They look like giant hands in that movie.
Yeah, they look like giant squid spiders with hands. Anyway, Vinder tries to kill Swarm and Azure, or at least maim them.
They just teleport around the room, and Yaz says the obvious thing the audience is thinking, like, stop, it's not gonna work.
Yeah. Meanwhile, back on Earth, in 1855, the humans are mounting a large-scale attack against the Sontarans, and it's not going well for them.
Well, we shouldn't skip over that the Doctor is basically trying to threaten Ritzka, and it's like, I speak for humanity, and the General goes, no, you don't, and he puts a gun to her head, and he's like, what are you doing? And he's like, I'm arresting you for treason.
Mm-hmm.
So they take her away, and while they're taking her away, well, I think Ritzka has this great line where he's like, I accept your offer of a massacre.
Of the massacre.
Imagine General Logan shows up, I'd like to show you this epitome of human culture, and Ritzka goes, all right, and they just leave because it's so bad.
Yeah. Earth isn't even worth conquering if this is what they produce. They should actually send like the massacre out in one of those, those ships that like send into space that are like, they include music and like movies and like various Earth culture like things. Should send like the massacre.
We should send a Doctor Who time capsule into space and include only the episodes The Massacre and
Full Circle.
I don't know. Full Circle, yeah, sure, why not?
That wasn't actually a bad story. It was just
Love and Monsters.
Yeah. Fear her. Well, so they mount this attack. Most of the humans...
And they all die.
Yeah, it seems like most of the humans die.
The general kind of plays dead. He just lies on the ground and is like, oh yeah, I'm dead. And it works.
Does he?
He's just basically the biggest coward of the whole episode. Yeah, because then he comes into the hotel and the Doctor and Mary are hanging out. And he's like, please, help me.
Yeah, I have vague recollection of this part of the episode. Probably here I was just like, all right, get back to Swarm and Azure. Well, they come up with this plan. I don't even remember. They were going to like sabotage the Sontaran ships or something like that, and they were working with Dan across time.
Well, so the Doctor, before I guess the battle actually happens, the Doctor sneaks in. They talk with Dan, and she's like, Dan, everything's on you. You're the man. Keep an eye on Dan, to reference one of ABBA's new songs. Keep your eye on Dan. Anyway, the call gets cut off before they actually tell Dan what to do, and Dan gets threatened by a bunch of Sontarans, only to be saved by everybody's favorite dog person, Carvanista.
Yeah, Carvanista.
He also comes in with a witty one-liner.
Yeah, he does, and I didn't realize this in the Halloween Apocalypse, but yeah, Carvanista is somewhat of an endearing character, since he is sort of this like begrudging protector of Dan.
Yeah. I really like Carvanista, actually. He's the most interesting thing, I think, so far, besides Swarm and Azure, that Chibnall has introduced in Flux.
Yeah, sure. Well, they get away, don't they?
Yeah.
They go down like some sort of garbage chute.
They're gonna go down to the escape pod. They're gonna crash the ship that they're in into all the other ones because Carvanista says they're building time invaders or something like that. But in order to do that, the Doctor also needs to remove the Sontarans from the past at the same time. And the Doctor explains her plan, which is that the Sontarans need a 7.5 minute sleep period every 27 hours. You know, they're polyphasic sleeping over there.
Oh my god.
Over in the Sontaran ships, and during that 7.5 minutes, they replenish their supply of like their suit supply of like their natural atmosphere because they can't survive in Earth's natural atmosphere. And basically, while they're resupplying, they're gonna cut all the supply cords so they're forced to retreat basically because they'll have no way to resupply.
Mm-hmm. So they do that, but then the general again throws a wrench in the plan by like hooking the place to blow. He sets this entire Rube Goldberg machine of explosions up, like, in no time flat. I mean, this is like minutes on the clock that he's out there setting this up, and it's this large-scale series of explosive, like, caches throughout.
Yeah, he has a look at the Doctor where he kind of implies that he's going to betray her, and you're like, what could he possibly do? But then he has the most efficient 2 minutes in all of Doctor Who history, perhaps rivaling that of our previous most efficient 5 minutes, which I'm pretty sure is in The Hungry Earth and Cold Blood.
Yeah. That episode, they go like, we have 5 minutes to set all this up, and they do like so much in that 5 minutes. You know, it makes you wonder, like, they had all these explosives on hand. Maybe they should have just snuck into the Sontaran encampment and, like, done this before, like, sacrificing thousands of men.
Well, the general didn't know, like, where their base was until this moment where the Doctor takes them to the base, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they had it cleverly hidden in a holographic rock. Which, like, begs a, like, how big was the rock, you know? Like...
Big enough.
Big enough to hide these massive Sontaran ships. Just walking by, like, a 200-foot tall rock formation and be like, yeah, that looks natural.
Humans didn't really know a lot about geography or geology in this time period, probably.
Probably. And there actually are 200-foot tall rock formations in the world.
That too.
Maybe not in in the Crimea, but elsewhere. Maybe in
So
the Crimea
yeah,
too.
well,
Who knows?
Ritzgar admits to making a tactical withdrawal, not a retreat, and as they're taking off, General Logan pulls a Harriet Jones prime minister and blows them up as they're retreating.
Yep.
The Doctor has a classic Doctor line where she says, "Sometimes men like you make me wonder why I bother with humanity."
Yeah, didn't either the ninth or 10th Doctor have almost the exact same line?
Well, the 10th Doctor was the one who set in motion his own death when Harriet Jones did this by leaning over to his security guard and going, "Don't you think she looks tired?" But he had a similar line before that where he berated Harriet Jones for killing them while they were retreating. That was the Sycorax. I can't believe I remember that.
Maybe the overarching story of this season will have to do with like time repeating itself or like folding in on itself or something, like, because we're getting all these different references to like, yeah, we now that you mention it, we basically just reiterate the Christmas invasion to some degree, but with different players, and like we're getting all these classic Who references, some of them more direct than others.
We're getting, like, it seems to be a reference to the Wedding of River song, of all things. Because and I mentioned this to you when we watched this, but the Wedding of River song, the plot of that episode was that time was literally all happening at once, because, of course, in that episode, the reason for that was that River's song tried to change a fixed point in time, so all of time was happening at once. But it seems like all of time happening at once is where where this whole kind of thing is going next week, or maybe the week after. And I think in the preview for next week, I think the Doctor has this line like, "Time is unraveling."
There's a lot of cryptic dialogue about time now in the episode, now that the Doctor gets back into the TARDIS, shows up on the Temple of at the Temple of Atropos.
Well, after she picks up Dan.
Right, so she picks up Dan. They go back to the TARDIS, and there's some sort of like viral infection, or like, yeah, like there's like fungal growth throughout the TARDIS.
Yes, she says something's draining the TARDIS.
We don't have time to focus on that, though, because we have to go to the Temple of Atropos.
So she meets up now with Swarm and Azure in person for the first time.
Yeah, they were only on Zoom like until now.
They were in Mind Zoom.
Strangely enough, Yaz and Vinder are nowhere to be seen.
Yeah. Swarm makes a cryptic reference saying that some of the Mori were broken, and he says that this is the planet Time, and the Doctor says there's no planet Time.
Yeah. He also tells her that time is starting to run wild, so another indication that maybe things are overlapping where they shouldn't be.
Yeah, so he says he made some quick repairs, revealing as the Doctor steps closer, because Swarm and Azure don't trigger the proximity sensor, apparently, that they have replaced the two broken Mori with Yaz and Vinder.
Right, and they start this countdown. I forget what actually it's for, so I guess it just sort of destroys all tension for it in my mind, but like...
Well, so Azure asks if she can count down, and Swarm says yes, and he says that when he snaps his fingers, I guess the repair will be complete and the full force of time will rush through Yaz and Vinder's body, because, like I said earlier, the priest triangles have explained to Vinder and Yaz that all of time flows through the planet Time.
And that's how we end the episode.
Yeah, right as he snaps his fingers, cut to black, credits roll.
Yeah, exciting stuff. I'm pretty excited to watch the next one. It's not too far off.
Yeah, I'm excited to see how they get out of this.
Yeah, we're going to be watching it in 4 days, so...
As long as it took to get from recording the previous one to this one, pretty much.
Yeah, I mean, we're in it now. It's like it's so weird to actually finally, for the first time in years, really be in Doctor Who. It's like we're watching the episodes as they come out and we're recording them. Like,
I know we're in the same boat as everyone else for once.
yeah, it just feels like, and we did this before too, where it's like, actually, maybe it's that like, because before we would always just like watch the episode. At least I would watch it like the night before, and then we would record the next day. Now it feels like I feel like I'm living Doctor Who a little bit more, where it's like we're watching the episode and then like a couple days later we record it, and then a couple days later we watch the next one type thing. Or it's like it's always
we're giving a little time to breathe.
Yeah, it's just like this constant loop.
Yeah, it's kind of fun.
It is, yeah, it's fun. No, it's not. I'm not saying it's a bad thing.
No, yeah, I was just saying it's kind of fun.
Yeah, it's only gonna last for like what 5 more weeks, so 4.
Yeah,
so. Another month basically.
So they do at some point. We didn't make this clear. They do say that basically they blacked out, and how they escaped the flux is that the Luparian shield is holding. And at the end of the episode, Carvanista says that the Lupari will remain to protect Earth while the Doctor goes to figure out what's going on with the flux.
Mm-hmm. Luckily for them, their shields are like flux repellent.
Yeah, interesting. Since the flux is supposed to be destroying everything in its path.
We'll have to see if they incorporate that into the story somehow, or if it's just like, a thing that's just like, well, it just works because it does.
I honestly don't feel like I need an explanation for why it works. It's like such a minor thing. It's like such a minor thing to just suspend my belief and be like, okay, the Luparian shield is flux repellent. That's fine.
Yeah, no, I don't care either, but it's just like, we'll see. We'll see what happens.
Let's see. I wanted to talk briefly about the Mori in the captions, because we watch these closed captions so that we can make comments on the episode without missing part of it. They spell it Mouri, I think.
Yeah.
But they pronounce it Mori, and that just made me think of this this phrase, which I guess is kind of a thematic reoccurrence through history, memento mori.
Yeah.
Which is basically Latin for remember that you have to die.
Yeah.
And mori being, well, death.
Yeah, remember your mortality or something like that.
Yeah. And I don't have too much really to draw comparisons here between the Mori and like that saying, but it does like knowing that this is the 13th Doctor's final season, and that not at the end of the season, but very shortly thereafter, that this is all leading up to her death. The choice of name being pronounced exactly like Mori, and being part of this like remember your mortality and like remember that you're like not immortal, being especially poignant for the Doctor.
Yeah, and it aligns with the flux stuff, right? It's like, things are in change. Some things have to die and for new ones to take their place.
And in a way, it kind of throws back almost to, if you remember the 11th Doctor, when he regenerated, his final speech was like, yeah, I'm going to die, but if someone new will come out. And his speech is basically like, but in a way, everybody's always dying and regenerating all the time, and everybody's changing, and the old version of them is dying as long as you always remember who you used to be.
Yeah, like much of that era, that is just an entire blur to me. Like, I barely remember it. It's just, yeah. But yeah, you're right.
So, again, like I said earlier, closing some plot threads. The Sontaran plot thread seems to be closed, even though we do find out, the Doctor was on the verge of finding out more when the General put her gun to her head. She was learning from Ritzcar that the Sontarans knew that their psychic examiners, or whatever they were called, their psychic planners, had known that the flux was coming and that this was the perfect moment to invade Earth. And we also didn't explain, actually, that the Sontarans' plan, and part of the reason why they're in both 2021 and 1833, was it 55?
55, yeah.
55, was that they were creating these time ships to basically invade Earth at every point in its history, and the Crimean War was actually their like trial run of the technology.
Mm-hmm.
Because I guess what's happening here, it's not actually made clear in the episode, but I guess what's happening is that the flux is occurring in 2021.
Yeah. Why was that not clear?
I don't know. For some reason, I just thought that when they were talking about the flux last week, they like mentioned that it happened. It's like screaming across space, and for some reason in my mind, I guess I conflated that like it's happening everywhere at once, including everywhere across time.
Oh yeah. Actually, now that you say that, I kind of had the same impression. But yeah, it is definitely happening in 2021. They even reference it of like 201 years later, right, when that
Yeah.
on-screen card, when we go from 1820 to 2021. Well, as far as our like classic Who reference watch, I think a lot of the ones, like I said, I've neglected to write them down, but like we mentioned a lot throughout the episode, so I'm pretty satisfied with that, to be honest.
Yeah, me too. Lynx is the big one, and but we mentioned a lot of the other ones, and we also went on some tangents related to the other ones. So
We didn't like officially instate this as like a segment we wanted to do, but what about like a flux watch, like things that are in flux in this episode?
things that are in flux. Okay, sure.
It's pretty,
Dan and Yaz were in flux.
yeah. I mean, it's maybe too broad like a thing to do because it's like what isn't in flux. And now that I say that out loud, I guess that's the idea. That's basically what the lesson the doctor learns at the end of the Timeless Children, right? Is like, when have you ever been held back by what came before? In other words, like, what isn't in flux? When are you not in flux? Type thing. So
That is something that I think a lot of people forget about the Timeless Child. A lot of people go, well, it like changes the entire fundamental makeup of the Doctor's character, which be that as it may, that's like not even. That is not the point that the story gets across to the Doctor, nor is it, I think, the point that the story is getting across to the audience. I think the point is that none of that actually matters. Like, the Doctor's history has never held them back.
right.
We kind of even see that in this episode when the Sontarans mention Lynx. The Doctor's like, I defeated Lynx. Like, she's like, I know who Lynx was, but like it doesn't even do anything to the Doctor. Whereas when the Doctor's mentioned to the Sontarans, they're like terrified. It's almost like every other character in the show is affected by their history, but the Doctor is not.
Right. Maybe we'll see that even called into question. Who knows? Of like maybe it'll be kind of a bad thing that the Doctor is not held back.
Maybe, but it kind of seems like that's not where this is headed. It's kind of, obviously, we assume that at some point the Doctor will save the day, whether that's at the end of the 6 episodes or like in her regeneration story. She will beat Swarm and Azure, and it seems to me that along the way we will, the way this is going, we will learn that her having no knowledge of them, but them. And I guess this is actually, this is really interesting because this kind of ties into this. Them having all this knowledge about the Doctor. Swarm knows who the Doctor is. He says they fought tons of times before. But the Doctor knows nothing about Swarm. And so if we get to the end of this episode, this serialized story, and that doesn't serve as a major detriment to the Doctor, it kind of just reinforces this, like, when have you ever been held back by your past, or even your lack thereof, your lack of knowledge of the past, not holding you back.
Yeah, you're right. Because Swarm and Azure, I think we mentioned this. I could be wrong, but they have that line of like, you humans, you see time so linearly, and they kind of they're making fun of Yaz and Vinder for this, and it's like, when you compare to like the non-linear way in which they seem to, we did mention this because we had that whole discussion with Arrival, but like compared to the non-linear way that they seem to see time, is like, there's something freeing about not knowing what's going to happen in the future. Not necessarily defining your own future by like already knowing it or something.
Yeah. Yeah. Very interesting stuff.
Yeah. I don't want to keep like, I don't want to do this, but I probably am going to. I don't want to keep like ragging on previous eras of the show and like heavily comparing them to this one, but like, I don't know, it's this entire Chibnall era that's coming to a head in this season It's like it seems a lot more thematically rich than previous seasons of Doctor Who. Just saying.
I don't know. I think both Russell T and Moffat were doing interesting things with the Doctor, and I think Chibnall is as well. Russell T took the Doctor in a very interesting direction where he built the Doctor up as like a god, as the last survivor of the Time War, and he dealt a lot with the Doctor's PTSD around that, right? Like how the Ninth Doctor didn't even want to acknowledge it, and the 10th Doctor had a lot of guilt about that, and then like getting into the Time Lord Victorious arc where he's like, I'm the last one, time belongs to me, like I control who lives and who dies. And then Moffat did a lot of like, it feels very reactionary, like deconstruction of that, like breaking the Doctor back down into being just a man, and you know, the 12th Doctor felt very guilty about the Time War, and the 11th Doctor was the one who like forgot that it happened, you know, in the Day of the Doctor, when they're like, when the 10th Doctor immediately knows how many children died when he destroyed Gallifrey, and the 11th Doctor doesn't even say a number because he chooses not to remember anymore, you know. And then Chibnall's obviously taking the Doctor in yet another direction where the Doctor is not defined by who they were or what they did in previous lives necessarily, where, you know, it forms a part of their character, but not remembering a lot of that may not necessarily serve as a detriment to them. Lest we forget also that in the classic show, they actually did establish that like the Doctor only remembers very little of one life to the next. And that generally it's more like they remember broad strokes, but never the like minute details that you might remember if it was your life.
Yeah, I forgot that they established that. But then again, when has Doctor Who lore ever been held back by what it was in the past?
Well, as you know, and I was thinking about this, the only Trust Your Doctor meme that I could think of we didn't work in last week. Consequences can be rewritten if it's done well.
The most important thing I've ever said in my life. Or the most, like, prophetic or something like that.
The most impactful, perhaps. Yeah. Anyway, I don't have too much more theorizing or discussion relating to this episode in particular to wax lyrical on this week anymore.
Neither do I. We do have some actors to mention, though.
Yeah, look up some actors. I looked up a couple people, so I'll go first. First is Gerald Kidd, who played General Logan. He was actually born in South Africa, in Pretoria, which is very interesting because I guess new-time listeners, I was born in South Africa as well. He's been in a couple things. Britannia, Muse, Soulmates, which I'm only saying because they sound interesting. He's got a pretty prolific acting career very recently, a lot of things in recent years. Assassin's Creed Origins and Odyssey. He had a voice acting role in both of them, as well as a Battlefield... I misread that. I thought that said Battlestar Galactica. Battlefleet Gothic Armada 2. What is that? He was in Sherlock, that Stephen Moffat TV show. Some classic British things, Doctors, Casualty. And that's pretty much everything I recognized on his credits list.
Mm-hmm. We also have Sarah Powell. She plays Mary Seacole. She has quite a few credits here. I think it's like, 43, I believe. Yeah, it's 43, according to IMDb. So she was on London's Burning, the TV series, Rumble, The Office, the TV movie, the 1996 one. I'm guessing that's the British Office. She was also in Dinotopia. Mm-hmm. I've watched that, surprisingly enough.
Wow.
Yeah. Holby Blue, The Bill, Florey's Dragons, Casualty, Doctors, Law & Order UK, something called Ice Cream Girls, Midsummer Murders, Silent Witness, Unforgotten, and yeah, so, Ghosts this year. She was in. I thought this was okay. She was in Last Christmas, the movie Last Christmas. I thought it was saying she was the casting director, but she played a character called casting director.
Huh. Weird. Did you say she had 43 credits?
Yeah.
Acting credits? Yep. All right, well, here's a glitch in the Matrix, because guess what? Gerald Kidd also had 43 acting credits, and the other person I looked up, Jonathan Watson, who played Ritzgal, also has 43 acting credits.
Oh, my God.
Okay, so, yeah, like I said, Jonathan Watson, Ritzgal, He's been in Two Doors Down. He has a recurring role as what he was doing right before Doctor Who. Group, The Bill, Casualty as well. The classic British, acting credits. Nothing else that I really recognize, but a couple things he had recurring roles on. The Ferguson Theory, City Lights, Naked Video, and that's pretty much everything interesting, I think. His first acting credit was in 1970 in the Wednesday play.
Huh?
We have some emails to respond to this week.
Oh, really? I thought we only had one.
Two, actually. So we will start with the first one we got, which is from Steven. Hey guys, don't read this if you have not watched the episode. I'm still not sure how I feel about Flux so far. It don't start coming and it hits the ground running. But it doesn't feel as engaging as I found series 11 and 12. Maybe I'll know for sure once the season wraps up. The talking at the same time during a video call gag got annoying real fast and felt like one of those drawn-out Family Guy jokes. Not sure how I feel about the cliffhanger and how I'd feel if Yaz dies after that Thanos snap, but I guess it gives people something to talk about. Also, I thought of you guys when one of the Sontarans said I accept your offer of a massacre. A couple people I know have also been speculating that the house at the beginning of the episode might have something to do with Lung Barrow. I've never read it, but I know that story has something to do with Cartmel's master plan for the Seventh Doctor. The Timeless Children thread kind of felt like Chibi trying to bring some of that back, so maybe people aren't that far off. I don't know, but apparently Lung Barrow house is supposed to be the Doctor's family house and related to the other, who might be the Doctor's past life. I kind of raised an eyebrow when you guys said it's rare to see the same story across multiple years of seasons and TV shows. It kind of gives off the impression that you guys don't watch much TV, which may not be true, I don't know. But 2 words for you, Babylon 5. This is my favorite sci-fi show and had a 5-year arc with recurring threads. Kind of related to the show's creator, J. Michael Straczynski, who I've met, seemed to be kind of lobbying for the role of Doctor Who showrunner when it was revealed that Chibi would be stepping down. He even said contact had been made. While I thought it was unlikely he'd get the role, the idea sounded exciting because he's such a superb writer and would probably make Doctor Who better just based on his track record. I'm okay with him not getting the job for now since he's busy with the Babylon 5 reboot, but once he's done with that, it'd be cool. Maybe after RTD2, I can only hope. I've told you guys this outside the podcast, but RTD coming back doesn't excite me at all. People are nostalgic for his era, but the big things I remember are Deus Ex Machina endings, cop-outs, grading romance threads, and how he started the trend of companions becoming OP. Anyway, great to hear you doing Trusted Art again. Cheers, Steven. I don't know. I really feel like I watch quite a bit of TV, or I used to. The plot threads across multiple seasons is like, in most common television, is very rare. And I think you have to make a distinction now because a lot of television is on streaming. And yes, on streaming, it is probably common to have threads over multiple seasons because it's a lot more likely that you'll have multiple seasons. On TV, it's like very rare that going into a season you're going to get another season. So it's like super, in syndicated TV, it's kind of rare, in my opinion, from what I've seen, to have plot threads carry over from season to season because you don't want to leave a plot thread open that may never get closed.
Yeah, flashback to Firefly and Shepherd Book, how that's going to be an open book, so to speak, forever.
I mean, he mentions Babylon 5, but let me provide a counterexample. Like, what about freaking Star Trek Enterprise had one recurring plot thread over multiple seasons, which was the temporal Cold War, which appeared like once in each season, and then they just killed it at the end of season 3 because they realized it was stupid. But there were no other recurring, like, real arcs like we're getting through through threads of what we're getting here in Chibnall's era, or like NCIS, which has run for 17 years and had like 2 arcs that kind of crossed seasons, maybe. Not that I've seen every episode of NCIS because I haven't anymore. But
anymore.
I haven't seen the most recent 2 seasons, so.
Damn, what are you doing with your life?
Not watching NCIS, apparently. Well, Gibbs is off the show now, so I don't know if I can watch it anymore. They've written out, like, the main character on NCIS. Like, that show's going to die pretty soon, I feel like, because of that.
Who knows? The older something is, the stronger it is, so we'll see.
Right. The 17, 18-year run of NCIS makes it impenetrable to TV cancellation.
Right. It's completely invulnerable. It could never happen.
Anyway, yeah, maybe there are more recurring plot threads in TV that we don't know. I don't know, but like just look at Doctor Who. You know, was there anything on the scale of what Chibnall's doing in Russell T's era? I guess you could argue like maybe Rose coming back, but that always felt like a target of opportunity with Russell T being like, I can get Billy Piper back? Wait a minute.
The only thing that, has sort of a similar vibe is like the 10th Doctor specials. Just with regard to like the time scale of them,
Yeah, the Time Lord Victorious arc. Well, I don't know. It's a discussion for someone who's more versed in what's current television, I suppose. But thanks for emailing, Stephen. Yeah. Good to hear from you. I've never read Lungbarrow, but I saw the Doctor Who show, I think, talking about Lungbarrow on Twitter.
I haven't read it either, if that wasn't obvious.
I've heard it's extremely controversial. Heard it introduces looms to the Doctor Who universe.
Damn. I have no idea what that means, but damn.
I know. Anyway, our other emails from Doug. Subject Flux. Hey guys, just wanted to say it's great to have Trust Your Doctor back. Really looking forward to alternating seasons with Inevitable. Flux is interesting so far. I've enjoyed the standalone stories with the overarching theme and look forward to where it is going. I'm with you, Keon. When watching the Halloween Apocalypse, I turned to my wife and said I thought Halloween was a U.S. holiday. Didn't realize it was celebrated all over. Anyway, keep up the good work, Doug. I want to say we didn't celebrate Halloween when I lived in South Africa. They might celebrate it now because, Internet of Things and like everything is so globally interconnected now. It's made its way over there. But I think when I was a kid, I lived there until I was 7. I don't remember ever celebrating Halloween when I lived there. That would have been, 2000 to 2004. So.
Yeah, maybe it's something. I'll just look it up really quick right now. If I can't find a decent answer, I'll put it in the show notes. But it's, maybe Halloween is more recent to the UK. Or maybe that's just like my...
Maybe Wikipedia has a history of Halloween page.
Well, I stupidly now just went to the Halloween Wikipedia page, which is going to take forever to sift through. I should just Google, like, is Halloween celebrated in the UK? Whatever, I'll put a bit on it in the show notes, because, like I mentioned last week, could have sworn that, or at least I thought it wasn't celebrated in the UK. And if other people are saying that too, then, it's only being corroborated, so, yeah.
Well, just very quickly skimming this Halloween page, it may have actually originated in Europe.
Yeah.
Because it seems like in this, it originated as a Christian festival and then spread to America and then kind of evolved into what it is today.
Yeah, it does.
But yeah, so you can put it in the show notes, I guess.
Yeah, there's this page, Geography of Halloween. That seems pretty interesting. In the end, they're talking about like tradition.
Curious.
Yeah, they're saying things like in traditional British, like Scottish and Ireland. Oh my god, I can't even speak. In traditional Scottish and Irish interpretations, and it's like, okay, maybe it started there.
Maybe it started in the UK. Maybe we had it all backwards all along.
Right.
TBD. Check the show notes.
Mm-hmm. Oh, Ireland. Yeah, just to be clear, Ireland is not part of the UK, at least Northern Ireland.
Scotland is.
Yeah, Northern Ireland is. But the other Ireland.
The geopolitics of the UK.
Yeah. Which I actually just found this out recently, but like Ireland is farther north. Like the northernmost part of Ireland, the country, is farther north than the northernmost part of North Ireland, the area of the UK.
It's like Iceland and Greenland. Iceland is more green than Greenland, and Greenland is more ice than Iceland.
Mm-hmm. Iceland is also like the most volcanic place in the world.
Icelandic, I think, is also like the closest language to like Old Norse. I looked this up recently from my roommate's NaNoWriMo story, I guess.
Yeah, it's like the westernmost Indo-European language.
Yeah.
Because like Indo-European stretches from like basically India to Iceland, and it's like it's the westernmost one.
Well, anyway, thank you very much for reaching out again, Doug. Would be, very interested to hear your thoughts on War of the Sontarans and maybe the rest of the season. And thanks both Doug and Steven for reaching out. I really enjoy being able to interact with our audience like this. Provided we have no social media comments we want to read.
No, we don't.
Okay, then I will take us to the end. If you would like to email us, you can reach us at thedoctor@decadavevegetable.com. Questions, comments, concerns, angry rants, love letters, your thoughts on Flux and War of the Sontarans. You can find us on YouTube at Decadent Vegetable. You can find us everywhere else you find the podcast at Trust Your Doctor. Be sure to leave a rating if you like the show.
Check us out on Facebook, Trust Your Doctor. Like us on Facebook. Also check us out on Twitter, TYD Podcast, and follow us on Twitter. And next time we're going to be watching Once Upon Time. But until then, the end. We didn't even mention that the Cybermen are appearing in the next episode.